Plot Twisters.
This is a podcast where we take movies and twist the plot to see if we can make them better, and if not, mellower.
At the moment, we're talking about teen movies from the 90s.
On this episode, The Virgin Suicides from 1999.
I'm Anders, and I need a social outlet outside the codification of school where I can interact with males my own age.
I'm Emma. Peach schnapps. Babes love it.
I mean, it is really good.
It is really good. Yeah, people are really against it, but it's very tasty.
When was the last time you had a schnapps? Of any flavor, let alone peach.
Quite recently. I have some in my house.
Proof of concept. Proof of...
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. So, I think there's a very key thing that we need to address here before we go any further.
Oh, yeah?
Which is content warning, content warning, content warning. This film features suicide. It features discussions of suicide and also self-harm. So if you are not in a good place, please do not listen to this episode. I'm not kidding, kids. We are going to talk about it. We're going to address it head on, but obviously we're going to try and be considerate. And we're also going to just talk about the film itself. I'd also just like to give the phone number to the Samaritans, which is an incredible service that you can reach out to at any time. I would thoroughly recommend it. Their phone number is 116-123, and it's a free number. So I'm going to leave that there for you. Now, let's time travel back to 1999.
I know this movie is heavy. Emma, I know this movie is heavy.
It is
right?
heavy.
And there's some heavy themes, and there's some things that are not super groovy, right? If you will. But before we do that, isn't it nice to be back in 1999?
It is nice to be back in 1999. It feels comfortable. Feels good. Feels familiar.
Feel real good.
Yeah.
Because it's been a while. It's been more than 1 week since
we
were the sorry, I know this movie is a sad movie, but still. 1999.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. This is a movie it's written by and directed by Sofia Coppola. And it's adapted from a book as well. So let me just be the first to say this movie was based on a book.
You love it. We love it when movies are based on books.
We do.
Some of the best ones are.
This film it's pretty heavy, but it's also pretty good. It's very poetic. It's very pondering and thoughtful and has a lot of very interesting ideas in it. It revolves around a family which live in a kind of suburban area in Michigan. In fact, in the town of Grosse Pointe, Michigan.
No way.
Which is weird because is Grosse Pointe like a particularly well-known
I'm drawing a blank
place?
here. I'm drawing a blank. Where is this? Where I've never heard of this place.
Yeah,
jokes.
We've been there before in Grosse Pointe Blank, so we're back.
We've been there in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
And now we're there in the 70s.
Yeah. How have we been to this place in so many different times?
So many times, I don't know.
So it revolves around this family. They live in a suburban house, I believe. It looked like the suburb. It looked like American suburbs to me, based on
suburbs, big time.
Yeah, big time. And the parents are very well-meaning, but get things wrong. They get things wrong, but they. I read them as being fairly well-meaning people.
Yeah.
Throughout the film, sadly, each of the 5 daughters takes their own life. At the start of the film, we see the 13-year-old daughter, Cecilia, essentially attempt to take her own life, and then it happens. And then later on, we see the same thing happen to the other daughters. And we see this through the perspective of 4 boys, or sometimes there's more of them. There seems to be a few of them kicking around, who kind of are very fascinated by this family. They're very fascinated by the daughters. They have mementos from them. They kind of obsess over them a bit, and they also spy on them, and it gets a little bit weird at times.
Yeah.
And we kind of see it through the perspective of we see it as if it's happening in the past. It's in a nostalgic lens. And we hear narration from them as older adults talking about this family. We also see that there's a lot of media interference. A journalist keeps turning up at the worst moments and very much sensationalizing this very difficult thing. And we also see some of their time at school. We do go to the prom in this one.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. A beautiful, mysterious, balloon-filled schnapps fest. I really
was a nice
like that prom.
And we have this kind of strange, slightly ethereal, nostalgic, slightly intangible relationship with these girls, in that we never fully get to know them. We never fully get to understand them. And I think it's very open to interpretation, certainly. And it's very much exploring a couple of different topics in a film that doesn't have a huge driving plot and probably leaves you feeling a little bit, not confused, but potentially unsettled and questioning things by the end of it. And once again, if you are going to watch it, there is a lot of stuff in there which is very visceral, very much kind of confronts you with the reality of the situation. So it's a difficult watch, but if you're able to, if you're in a place to deal with that, there's a lot of very interesting and very poetic stuff in there, I would say. Are you familiar with some of the other films that Sofia Coppola has done?
If I was sat down and this was a test and it was like high school and the test was film studies 101 and pop quiz, write down every movie directed by Sofia Coppola, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. I'd have a very confident number one, and that movie is The Virgin Suicides from 1999. And then I would
This is why you take me to your pub quiz team, right?
Yes! And I'm there for... What am I there for? Sports?
Music trivia.
Oh, music trivia.
Did you say sports?
I was stabbing. I thought maybe if I said sports, cool people would think I was cool. No, I'm there for music trivia, and if there's a question about, amateur metal detectorists, oh my goodness, right? Sign me up. Sofia Coppola. Did she direct Lost in Translation?
Yes. Good. So the main one that I'll kind of reference here is Lost in Translation. She also did a film called Marie Antoinette, which was I thought was pretty good actually.
Wasn't Kirsten Dunst in that movie?
She was, yeah.
Oh, I get it. Because she was also in this movie.
But I think personally, I would say, I think it's always a bit of a waste of time, like comparing, directors' different works or whatever, saying one's better than the other.
Right.
I got on better with Lost in Translation than I did with this one, I think. Because I think Lost in Translation, whilst it has a lot of very similar qualities, it has a slightly more accessible and understandable thread through the film, I think, than this one did. I think this one, it was her first feature film.
What, this movie was her first one?
Yeah, which is pretty impressive, really.
All right, fair enough. Yeah,
and I think that you can really see a lot of the qualities that she brings to a movie and a lot of the stuff that she does really well in this film. What I struggled with, I suppose, was that thing that we've seen before in other films, films like Dazed and Confused and Pump Up the Volume, which is films that are driven far more by moments and snapshots than they are by a continuing driving plot. Yeah. Because I think for me, I don't know, maybe it's just my attention span is not great. Yeah. But I really like to be drawn in by a really thrilling plot that's going to, present me with exciting outcomes and an exciting twist and all that kind of thing. This film doesn't really have that. It's more of a journey that you go on. But I thought it was very beautifully done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I get what you're saying. There were moments when you're like, if the narrator hadn't told you how much time had passed, you wouldn't really know. Side note, the narrator is Giovanni Ribisi, and that was really cool. It was like, oh yeah, cool. I'm with you. He's from the 90s. But it'd be like a day passes and then a year passes.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't really get a sense of like a linear sort of thing. It was just sort of like there were milestones, but for the most part it was a bit all over the place, but not in a like a hectic way. It was all over the place in a very quiet, sort of wavy way.
Meditative.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was confused by that as well.
I think the handling of time is always tricky. From writing myself, I can tell you it's very difficult because you...
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very, very necessary to say how much time has passed. Sometimes it isn't. But I think that you can, as an audience member, sometimes feel like you, like a bit like you're treading in water.
Yeah.
Like you don't quite have your feet in the story. You don't have your stance because you're not entirely sure what's going on in that regard. I watched a film recently which deals with time brilliantly.
Was it Hot Tub Time Machine?
Yes. No, it was. So there's another film from the 90s. It's Death Becomes Her. I have a very big sell for why you should watch this movie.
Oh, yeah?
It was written by the guy who wrote Back to the Future.
Robert Zemeckis wrote this movie?
Yeah.
Are you for real?
So you should definitely watch this film. But it deals with time in a very funny way, because it takes place over a very long stretch of time, and it uses the time jumps for comedic effect, in the sense that you will get words on the screen saying 7 years later come up at a specific point. It's very funny. But that gives you a very solid grounding, and it's very relevant why the time passes that way. There are other films which don't really bother about time at all, and it kind of doesn't matter what sort of time is like. Or if you think of a film like Inception, which time is very confusing, but you kind of have a grip on where you are. So there's loads of different ways that you can handle it. And I think with this film, it doesn't matter, I think, that you don't know what the time is. I think you can kind of survive with it, just because it's like... It's just like
it's
a
fine.
memory,
It's
isn't it?
fine.
Yeah, it's like it's somebody remembering, it's somebody looking at the past. And a lot of it is like montages of people like running through wheat fields, and like people's hair blowing and close up of people's eyes and stuff. And it's just like, it's just like someone's memory. So it's kind of okay.
Yeah, because it's all a bit sort of, it's all fine. It's all sort of breezy. I mean, the content isn't breezy, but the way it's portrayed is. I found myself, here's a thing that I was wondering, right? And I'd love your thoughts on this, right? So let's consider this for a second, you and I. This movie was made in 1999.
Yes.
But for some reason, like a lot of movies from the 90s, it was set in the 70s.
Interesting. Another one.
I get that, because the 70s were cool, and they had a cool aesthetic, and, you think about, like, movies that we've talked about. Slums of Beverly Hills, Dazed and Confused. These are movies from the 90s, based in the 70s. Detroit Rock City, that was also set in the 70s.
Yeah.
The thing is, we might have said this already, but one of the things I love is when a movie is set in the past, making it always in the past, so it's a time. It's in and of itself. It's timeless.
Yeah.
As well as being very specific in time, right? Because movies from the 90s, some of them that we've talked about, feel really dated because they're set in the now, but the now was like, over 20 years ago. But this movie was from the 90s, but it was set in the 70s, so I watch it now and it's like a movie set in the 70s, and that's fine. Yeah. Except for one thing that really bugged me.
Yeah.
Okay. The beginning of this movie, it goes, 25 years ago.
From when?
Okay? From when? 1999? Right? Why didn't they just say 1974?
That's very true. That is silly.
Dear Sofia Coppola.
What are you doing?
First and foremost, thanks for reading my letter. Also, I loved
fan.
you. I loved a big fan. First time, long time. Loved it when you did that movie. I liked Lost in Translation, and I also liked this movie, Virgin Suicides, and just in general, I hope you're well. Right? This has been a tough year, crazy year. Why didn't you just write back in the day, 1974, tweet at me or write me back? Sincerely, hugs and kisses, Anders. That's all I have.
It was based on a book, so it could be that was what was written in the book. Just saying. But still, it is weird. And then I suppose what it's also doing is it's telling you that there is a present day, as in present day 1999 component. So
which they don't jump to except for one time when they do, to show you Trip.
Yeah.
in the present.
doing like a documentary style interview, and it's only very quick. There's a couple of things that they only did once and then they didn't do again. So there was that. There was a character, a character in the now times of 1999 directly addressing the camera for about a minute. There was also the bit, when so they're all the sisters are going to the prom.
Right.
And their mother has made them these dresses which were
very
funny. They look like Jane Austen characters or something.
They were
long kind of weird dresses with like a light dusting of a flower print. And there's a bit where Kirsten Dunst comes down the stairs and goes up to her
I know what you're going to say. Keep telling us. It's so weird.
She goes up to her date, Trip. And then there's this strange shot which zooms in on her knickers. And you see like a kind of X-ray cut through of her knickers. And she's written Trip on them. And that's the only time they do anything like that. In the story, it makes sense. And it's like one of those things in the book, you would know that because you can just write in a book, she's got Trip written on her pants.
She wrote Trip on it. Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like, in a film, to do that as a filmmaking thing once.
What are you doing?
And then not again, it's odd.
Also, isn't there a scene when they show Lux's face and she smiles and there's like a twinkle in her eye or in her teeth or something?
Yeah.
Like a Colgate commercial from the 70s?
Yeah.
That was weird.
Just a one-time thing.
Just one time.
Yeah. It's odd that. Because I think you kind of... You get a understanding of the way that the film is going to sort of treat you. And then when it doesn't do that, it's strange.
Very jarring.
Another weird one that probably doesn't really bother anyone else, but the opening credits were all handwritten. So the title of the film was handwritten. It was like doodled everywhere. So I was thinking, oh, well, that's cool. That's something they'll do again.
Nope.
But they didn't.
Nope.
And that's
again.
Fine. It's fine. But it's just strange because your expectations are...
You know what that reminds me of? There's this Italian restaurant.
Okay.
Right? Not too far from where I live, okay? And I remember when they were building, this is a couple years ago, they started subtly. They put up the name of the restaurant in front of the building, right? And the font that they used on the sign was very generic, probably Helvetica or whatever, right? And I thought, an Italian restaurant's open up. Big deal.
I mean, sorry, it is a big deal, just to be clear.
It's such a big deal. They opened a restaurant. Italian, I hope they have garlic bread. Yeah. Then like a week later, they had put up another sign below the name of the restaurant. And it said, Italian restaurant. And you bet it was in a different font. And then they were going to open soon. So they put up a opening soon sign. And it was in a different font. And then they added at least 2 more signs that were in different fonts. And by the end of it, there were probably 9 fonts in different styles. And I kept thinking, I don't trust a place that doesn't know the concept of continuity.
Yeah, consistent branding. You also have to pay each time you want to use a different font, technically, for
exactly.
That sort of purpose.
Get your stuff together. This restaurant that actually closed, now that I remember it, it's closed now. And also, Sofia Coppola. Branding is important. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Something that I noticed in this film that was very cool, that I liked a lot. This is another minute detail, but I think you've kind of got to focus on the minute details in in these kinds of films.
You have to, because otherwise,
where are you?
The big picture is because where are you?
There were a few moments where there was a conversation that happened that you weren't let in on.
Yeah.
So there was a moment where Trip went to speak to the girl's dad, and he goes inside a room and the door closes, and you see the conversation happening through the door, but you can't hear it. And then there was another moment where they were driving to a graveyard, and there were people protesting. I think the people who worked there were protesting. And you see the father get out the car, but you, as in the camera on your behalf, stays in the car. So you're not part of that conversation. And I thought that was such a fun thing to do. And I really like it when films do things like that, because it's using film, it's using the medium of film as a way of making you feel distanced. And I think so much of this film was about isolation, that to actually isolate the audience by literally shutting them out from a conversation, but not so much that you're like, what are they even talking about? You know, you get it. But it's just a cool way of doing that. I really like that.
I agree. You know, it's funny. I noticed that when it was happening, and I wasn't quite sure why I liked it so much. This movie had a really wonderfully, it wasn't slow, but it definitely had a pace about it that it lingered in little moments throughout it that didn't feel sluggish to me, but definitely felt different. You know, it was technically, I think it was a slow burner of a movie, but I was captivated by it. And it also made me feel ways in my heart, you know?
You watch a film like this to get something out of it, I would say. It's like you will whilst you're watching it, you will look for something in there that you can find meaning in, because it doesn't really feel like there is a clear, direct meaning, and that's because there isn't a strong, obvious plot. It's not like, oh, we need to get Kirsten Dunst to the prom on time or anything. It's more reflective. It's more there's more peaks and troughs. You know, there's some very, very challenging stuff that happens. So I think as a viewer, your instinct is to find meaning in it somehow. And it's a very sad topic. It's a very challenging topic. It's a very difficult topic. And like I said, it does deal with it face on. And, you know, you see a lot of stuff that I wonder if they maybe wouldn't show nowadays, because it's like there's maybe more of an understanding of like a responsibility to the audience, and people might think, actually, do you know what, to go into this much detail is potentially not responsible. But what I think this film doesn't do, and I'd be very interested to hear other people's opinions on this, so do write in if you have one, but I personally don't think it glamorized the subject it was dealing with, and I think that is impressive. So. Doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of films that I've seen that handle the same topic. I think it didn't shy away from the reality, and it also didn't make it seem like a romantic thing to happen. It was a terrible thing. It was a very tragic thing, but the people who were involved were respected and were still developed. And I think there was also this message of, if this is something we will never fully understand. We will never fully understand the experience that people go through when they die by their own hand. We will never fully understand the complexities of mental health, the complexities of that every individual has to go through when they're dealing with their own life. You know, no one else will ever understand that. And I think that's what this film's message is, in a way. If there is one, it's saying you'll never really know. And I think that's a useful message, basically.
Don't disagree. The whole perspective of this group of, you know, in the film, young men, and, you know, the narrator of, you know, a grown-up men who are all looking back and trying to understand what happened to these girls.
Yeah.
And not knowing what happened, even though they were there on the night that it happened. This movie felt like it had a point in the beginning where one of the sisters takes her own life, and then there's a whole middle bit that doesn't focus on that at all. It actually focuses on where it's almost like, why aren't they sharing more how they feel? And then the fascination and the mystery about them, and then we, you know, the end culminates with that.
And there's a facade, isn't there? There's a facade the entire time that we are never really allowed to sort of penetrate. There's this exterior vision around this family that, even though we spend so much time with them, we always feel on the outside of it, and we always feel like we don't know what's going on. And I think that's a great commentary, particularly if you take, you know, that media angle into it, that you see the news reporter talking about it. That's almost like you're being presented with this narrative, but because it's being shown very explicitly with this through this very invasive reporter who turns up at the wrong moments and who doesn't seem to care about the people, and she starts asking all these inappropriate questions. So we see that narrative. We also see the narrative of these boys who, in a way, are glamorizing this situation a bit because they see these lost tragic souls that they want to rescue. But that's not what the movie's viewpoint is. That's what the boys' viewpoint
Yeah.
And it's very clear about this is what these young teenage boys are seeing. But we aren't seeing that. We're seeing something different. We're seeing the reality a bit more of the fact that the parents are kind of doing... They're not doing their best, but they're doing a lot. They're trying, And I think that's a very interesting thing to show. When we were watching it, actually, one of the things I thought about was, why don't we see more stories that are these kinds of films that we talk about on this podcast, like teen films? Why don't we see more of the parents' perspectives? They're often always the bad guys, or they are naive and ignorant.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting to actually see a parent's perspective a bit more with Kathleen Turner's character. You see she's struggling. She's really struggling.
Yeah.
And the way that she deals with the loss of her child is by being even harder on her other children, which is unfortunately the wrong thing to do. But you kind of...
Yeah.
You see that in its complexity.
So sad. And the way she was handling it. And then when there's this scene where their priest comes to try to help, I guess, which is just what a priest would do, I suppose. And he just walks into the house, and the dad is just sat there watching baseball.
Yeah.
Surrounded by flowers from the funeral.
And he's like smiling and watching the game. Yeah.
He's just drinking a beer, watching the game. And the priest is trying to engage. And he's just going, double hitter. This guy.
Yeah.
And
that's a fantastic scene, actually.
So good.
Yeah.
And the priest just realizes, I'm not going to get through to you. So he goes upstairs and tries to talk to the kids. They don't want to talk to him. He tries to talk to the mom. She doesn't want to talk to him. And it's just so heavy and perfectly captured, I think. Just this heaviness of grief, and nobody can say anything. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. But it's a tough one to crack. Can I tell you something I loved about this movie?
Yes.
The scene for me that just got me is the scene where the boys across the street finally connect with the girls, and they connect through a phone call, and they do this call and response playing records. And it's just like, it's so good, right? It's so good for a lot of reasons. One, it's a perfect use of music, right? And two, I just sort of loved the way that they decided, because they could have said, the boys could have been like, we love you, we're obsessed with you, can we talk, can we be friends? We have questions for you. But instead, they chose to play a record. And they played this beautiful song called Hello, It's Me by Todd Rundgren. And they're listening, and it's beautiful. And then they go, call us back. And the girls call back, and they play a song by Gilbert O'Sullivan, Alone Again. And that's a beautiful song, too. And they set up this thing where they're just playing records to each other, trying to say how they feel. The next song they play is Run to Me by the Bee Gees. That's a tune right there. Let's bop. If you want to pause this podcast for a second, go listen to Run to Me by the Bee Gees. That song kills. And then the girls respond with Carole King's So Far Away. And that song will always, and when I watched this movie 100% did, cut through my whole body and destroyed me because it's such a good tune. Anyway, I'm not going to wax on about the music. What I want to say is, that moment, and Sofia Coppola's direction in this, so she splits the camera north and south, where you have the shots of the girls above and the guys below as they're calling each other and playing music over the phone, trying to connect, was such a cool scene. And it felt like a mixtape happening in the moment. It was so good and so beautiful and so sad, and I loved it. And if I ever get to hang out with Sofia Coppola, which I assume that I will, because, Life is what you make it. Eat, pray, love, right? Right. What I want to say to her is two things. I want to say, one, I really like the soundtrack, the music you chose in this movie. Then two, I want to say, hey, what's it like hanging out with the French pop band Air? Because they made the soundtrack for this movie also very good. I suppose the third thing I'll say to her is, you seem like you super get music. Am I right, Sophia? And then she'll say, you are right, Anders. And then will it have a scone and a cup of Earl Grey tea or something? That's what will happen in my dreams.
Yeah, as two Americans, that seems like the right thing to do.
Is she American?
Yeah?
I feel like she's from France.
France? Well, she's either American or Italian. Come on.
No, she's
Sofia
probably
Coppola.
American. Yay, Sofia Coppola.
Yeah, she's from New York. Hey, social media is destroying society as we know it, so why not get involved by following @plottwisterspod on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
What if we don't twist it, but we make a sequel, and it's set in present day, and it's about the boys?
Okay.
What if it's a sequel and it's called The Boys?
That's already a
The man. It's called
already a thing.
It's called the Scrapbook,
Oh,
and it's
the scrapbook.
right. It's 30 years later, and here's Giovanni Ribisi and the other lads meeting up, and they actually are trying to figure out what happened, and maybe they decide to make a documentary.
Okay.
And they go back to their hometown of Grosse Pointe, and they actually try to piece together what happened to these girls. It's a sequel. What do you think?
Isn't that kind of what this movie is, though?
No, but in this one, they
all talking
figure it
about
out. Maybe that scene with Tripp when he's in present day and in like Narcotics Anonymous or whatever, maybe that is the rest of that movie that we haven't seen yet.
Just the rest of Tripp's life. How about that? What he gets up to.
Right.
Because like things have obviously gone bad for him. He's the like prom king. I think he's the quarterback, isn't he? Of course he is. If he's the prom king, he's the quarterback as well.
Yeah.
He's with the most beautiful girl, and then he has this weird moment where they have a romantic encounter in the middle of the football field.
Right.
And then he walks away, and then we see him sitting in his house, and he's all like, sad, I guess, and listening to music.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next time we see him is like when he's 40 or whatever, and things have taken quite the turn. So what happened in the middle?
Yeah.
What happened to Tripp?
What happened to Tripp?
Tripp's Tripp.
Tripp's Tripp.
Tripp Fontaine again.
Tripp Fontaine. Don't
you love coming up with the title for the movie before you've even decided what the movie is about?
Hey, listen, I assume, and I don't work in quote Hollyweird, right? But I assume that's how all major motion pictures are made.
Yeah, just pick a title and then just figure it out. Someone was like, oh my God, Grosse Point Blank. That sounds fun, doesn't it? How can we make that work? Oh, there's this town called Grosse Point, and you could make somebody called blank.
Home
Perfect.
Alone. It's about a boy who's home alone.
Why is he? He's alone.
He's alone, right?
I've had this idea. It's Jurassic Park.
Right. Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me though, because that's 2 words.
Because Jurassic is a time period, and I think was there dinosaurs there?
Yeah, and then it's in a park.
Open space.
Yeah.
So is there something there?
No, I think you might be right. Right? I got this movie. We're thinking about a movie. We're not sure what it's going to be about, but the movie title is Speed. Okay? We know that it's about something that is
punchy.
fast.
I like it. Yeah,
punchy,
fast.
short. We don't have time for 2 words. Speed.
Speed.
Speeding by. Is it about a bus? It's about a bus. Who's on that bus? Keanu Reeves. That's a go picture, right? Tripp.
I've got one too.
Yep.
I've got one too. I think this is going to really get a thing you're really going to like.
I can't wait. I'm so pumped.
It's called forward to the future.
So close.
No? You don't like that?
No, I feel like we need to go back, not forward.
Oh, okay. Subvert it. Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Trip's trip.
Yep. Trip's trip.
Where does he go
What
on his
happened
trip?
to Trip?
Where does he go? Space.
So I think here's what I'm thinking, right? Okay. Trip, leave, space. He doesn't go to space.
No.
Too obvious.
Too obvious.
Maybe he goes to Earth's space, which is, of course,
Anywhere on Earth.
no. Yes.
Technically.
Yes, but no. What I mean is specifically
Yes.
underwater.
Ooh.
And that is Earth's space because it's undiscovered.
The space of Earth. I've heard it called that many times. And
The wet space,
and also, ooh.
as they say.
I was
Wet.
gonna make a joke that was like, oh, I've also heard space called like the water of the universe or something, and then you said the wet space, and I just
Yeah, you felt icky. Yeah, you felt wrong. Moist.
need to go and get some hand
Planets.
sanitizer for that one.
Great news, it's 2021. I'm sure you have some available to you. So, Trip leaves Lux on the football field, okay? And he just walks away,
Yes.
okay? And that's sad, and we know that in the future he doesn't really regret that, but he harkens back to it, right?
And I know why he did it.
Tell me why.
Because Trip is a very passionate marine biologist enthusiast.
He loves fish.
He loves fish, he loves the ocean, it's his whole thing. But he's a jock, he's a quarterback.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks can't enjoy something as nerdy as science.
Nope.
So he's studying biology. Do you call it biology? Like, would you say you're taking biology?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
It's called biology.
It's called
What class?
I don't know.
Here, let me give you an example.
Math, I don't know.
Whatever. Math is fine. Oh, it's lots of plurals. Who cares? Maths. It's all the same. You would say, hey, what class do you got? And I would say, biology. And then you would go, good luck with that. I'll see you at math.
Right.
Huh?
And then
school.
civics class. And gym.
And home ec.
Yeah. Oh, we have home ec as well.
Love gym. I don't really.
Anywho, he is taking biology. He really wants to go to, let's say, Harvard for studying study marine biology. Maybe not Harvard.
Yeah.
Let's say let's pick a new place. Brown.
Brown. Yeah. Not Brown.
No.
Yeah, no, Brown.
Brown.
Sorry, that's a Simpsons thing. Yeah, Brown.
Okay. And he, but his parents, obviously, because sports and parents in the 90s, they want him to do football stuff and not science stuff. So he's stressed out.
Yeah.
And after him and Lux have had their romantic encounter, she says, gosh, it's so attractive that you're really into sports, I always dreamed about being with a quarterback. I always dreamed about it. And it's so exciting that you're going to go on to pursue that to a professional level.
Right.
And he's like, oh God.
Ugh.
No, I just want to go and study dolphins, actually.
I love fish so much.
And then he has this,
screams it into his pillow.
Yeah, he has this crisis about it, and he's like, oh God, and he walks off. But he's not just walking away from her. He's also walking away from the football field. You see, that's what it is.
Right.
So he's not
he
just
abandons
leaving
football.
her.
He abandons his love of his life. He abandons his two dads. He abandons everybody.
Yeah, he says something like, I didn't worry about her getting home safe. I didn't know why. It's like, it's because you weren't really leaving her. You were leaving football.
Everyone, yeah.
Did
he walk straight from that football field straight to the beach?
Into the ocean.
Into the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it turns out because he's been smoking the ganj so much, and it's a special kind of weed that he has developed an ability to stay underwater for a long time.
Is that a thing? Okay.
It could be. No, and I'm not saying it's directly linked to weed in general, but I mean specifically what he was smoking at the time. Yeah. It sped up some sort of a weird evolutionary thing, and he had, here's what he has. bell bottoms and gills. Because it's 1974, okay?
Yeah.
And he can swim, and he discovers different types of fish. Here's the sad part, though. He discovers fish and also, leaves his family. And do we ever flash to what's happening in the...
I would like him to actually go and study marine biology. Like, he goes to Brown. He does the course.
All right.
Powered by this powerful, powerful vision of going under the sea and seeing all the amazing sea creatures that there are.
So he leaves Lux and goes straight to Brown.
I mean, he doesn't walk there straight from the football field.
I like thinking that he walked there, okay? That is the only reasonable reason to leave, if it is reasonable, to leave, the love of your life asleep on a football field. It's that that you have to walk straight to your university.
3-day walk.
Where are we going? Where are we going? Chicago to, where's Brown?
New England, maybe? Somewhere like that.
I'm good. It's in Rhode Island. Dang. You know what? Get walking trip because it's going to take you a while. But he will get there, right?
That's a long way.
So whatever. We can talk about the specifics in post. But he gets to Brown. He becomes a marine biologist.
Studies for quite a few years. That takes up a chunk of time because, you got to do a PhD or whatever. It takes so that takes us to late 20s. And then what goes wrong?
Then what?
He's studying. His PhD assignment is that he's trying to find a very, very rare fish. It's very rare. He believes it's real. Nobody else believes it's real. It's called... What's it called? What's the fish called?
Obviously, it's called the Flambeau Corellien.
And he's trying to find it, and nobody believes him. And then one day he goes out for a swim casually. He's at a beach with his family, which he has now, by the way. And his kid, his 3-year-old child, is in a rock pool and says, Daddy, look over here. And he's like, what is it? And he runs over to the rock pool and he looks in, and there's the fish that he's been searching for 10 years, and no other scientists have believed him. Nobody's understood. They've all said this amazing fish. Maybe it's like a hybrid fish and butterfly or something. It's like a flying fish.
What?
Thing.
It can do both of those things?
Yeah.
Fly and swim?
Yeah. And it's but it's cooler than an actual flying fish. It's got beautiful butterfly wings. And he's like, look at this. Oh my God, it's real. He's like, wait,
it's real.
My camera. He'd have a camera because it's the 80s now.
Yeah.
He goes, wait, where's my camera? He runs back to where he was sitting on the beach, and he comes back over and it's gone. And he's
whoa. Can I make an edit on that?
Oh.
Here's the thought, right? He runs and gets his camera, and he's running back. And then he doesn't see because he's fumbling and trying to proceed the film to the next shot, that he trips over a rock. And he goes, oh no, I tripped.
Hoisted on my own petard.
And his daughter goes, more like, you are Trip.
Yeah, Trip's Trip. There it is.
Trip's Trip. That is Trip's Trip.
And he tries to take a photo of it, and he just gets when he develops the photo later, it's a picture, but there's a tiny dot in the corner, and he's like, it's there, it's real, I got it.
I promise.
But nobody believes him, and it sends him down a very, very, very dark path, which ends him
he goes to NA and AA combined, and that's where we pick up with him in this movie.
What we didn't see was the next 5 minutes in which he says, the fish is real. Trust me, the flying fish, I saw it. It's real. Here's my photograph.
I saw it.
Sign up to my online zine in which I talk all about it. It's made by the government. Did you know that? It's made by the government. It's real.
All a lie. Everything's a lie. You're all sheep. Wake up, sheeple. I believe that it is time for us to rate this movie. Emma, I would love to know, on a scale of 1 to 5 shots of peach schnapps, how many shots of peach schnapps would you rate the 1999 classic, The Virgin Suicides?
I think I need to raise at this point that we haven't been hugely consistent with our rating system.
I don't know
at some
what you're
point
talking
I need to
about.
go back and check what I've rated all
What
the
do you
other
mean?
films, because I think I don't know if I'm being consistent. So it's just a disclaimer. I'm going to rate this film 3.5 because I think it was beautifully made. I think it was very well made.
Yeah.
Not my favourite, and I think, like I said, that whole thing about not having a very clear, prominent plot does seem to usually turn me off a little bit. But yeah, I thought it was very well made other than that. How about you?
2.5. I loved the aesthetic. I love the music. I love the cinematography. I love the writing. There's so much about this movie I really loved. But the end of the day, you can't just watch this movie, okay? You can't just be like, I'm going to throw on the Virgin Suicides. And for that reason, it's a 2.5, right? I don't want to watch this movie again. Ever again. Even though it's so beautiful. Hey, listen, after watching that pretty full-on movie, I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to go drink some peach schnapps. Am I right?
Yeah. Arches and lemonade. That was always my go-to in the clubs. Back when I went to clubs. Back in the before
Ooh,
times.
that or blue WKD, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I know how to party.
Anyway, thank you for listening to this episode of Plot Twisters.
Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.